Hey guys, welcome to my tutorial on how to use Premiere Pro and do some basic editing. So in this tutorial I'm going to cover how to set up a new project in Premiere Pro, how to set up a new sequence in Premiere Pro, a little bit of an explanation about what sequences are, a little bit about aspect ratio, a few little small minor technical things, the different interfaces in Premiere Pro, how to edit your footage on the timeline, and how to do a bit of basic color correction, add some music, a bit of an explanation, on the different tools as well, and that's basically it. Yeah. So let's get into it. So first of all, now this is the 2020 version of Premiere Pro that I'm using. So that's just because I'm working on my computer at home, which is a little bit older. So you guys should be working on the 2022 version of Premiere Pro, which is slightly different. It's not much different. There's just a few different that move the buttons around a little bit. The interface basically looks the same. So anyway, when we start up Premiere Pro, we should get this window. So yeah, what we want to do is just go New Project and create a new project. It'll come up with this window, and I'm just going to call this Cityscapes, or whatever I'm going to call it, basic editing actually, because we're not doing basic editing. I'm just going to choose where it's going to save the project file. So yeah, if we click on that button there, at the moment we can see that it's saving the project file in this folder here. So I'm just going to change that to, you can change it to wherever you want. If you go to your documents folder, there's usually a Adobe folder in here somewhere, or if there is not one in here, then you can just save it to wherever. So I will just save it on the desktop for now. So just choose the desktop, and that's where it's going to save. This is just the working file, so not the actual where the footage is. You can change that to where if you want to, where the footage is, if you want to. So then we've got a few other little options here. We don't really need to change those. You've got the video display format, which is set to timecode, the audio, which is set to audio sample. So that stuff is all good. And then I'm just going to push OK. Cool, and I'm just going to make this full screen like that. So this is the editing window for Premiere Pro. So we've got basically 4 windows. We've got down the bottom here, we've got the bin window, which is, or our footage bin, sorry, where we keep all our footage. Up here is the source window, where we view the footage that we've got. Over here on the right side, and down the bottom, is the timeline. And up the top here is the program, basically where we view what we're editing. So footage bin, source window where we view the footage, timeline where we do the editing, and this window here, the program window, where we view what we're editing. Now the 2020 version, these buttons appear up the top, which are editing, color effects, audio, graphics, but I think in the 2022 version it doesn't have those anymore, so there's a little button over here somewhere that you push to get these same options. That's one of the things that's changed. There's probably a 2023 version out soon, or out already, that is probably a little bit different as well, so anyway. So that's the basically the interface. Let's grab our footage. So here's all my footage. So you can either import the whole folder if you want, or you can import the individual files. Now, we should always be naming all our files before we actually import them. So we should be going through our files and just looking at them and just going, okay, that's that one, and deleting anything that we don't want to use before we've even put it in. And then we should be naming it what it is. Okay, so these ones are all named already, and I've also got my music here, which I can import as well. So I'll just import the whole folder into Premiere Pro just by dragging it over this side here into the footage bin. and it will import everything. And there is our folder. So there's all our shots, and if we double click on one of the shots, any of the shots, it will come up here in the source window, and if you click the space button, or there's a bunch of buttons here as well, you can push the play button there as well, so space, and that'll just play your footage. I'm just going to turn that down a little bit. You can also scrub through the footage if you want, just by bringing the mouse over this thing here, the playhead, and you can scrub through the footage, and you can just watch it. Cool. So just a little explanation of the buttons down here. So we've got these two buttons. So at the moment, this one is set to icon view, which shows all of our footage as little window icons, which we can also scrub through the footage on those, by the way. But yeah, we can also look at list view. So if you go to list view, this is handy to know. So if you want to know what your some of your data about your footage, you can click on list view, and then you can see, okay, so this one was shot in 25 frames per second, and this one here was shot in 29.97 frames per second. So if you want to check stuff like the frame rate, that's where you can do that in Premiere Pro. The list view. It also gives you a bunch of other information about it, like how long it is, if there's any inputs and outputs, which we haven't done yet, so I'll get to those in a little bit. And it also tells you the aspect ratio, which is really important. So at the moment we should all be shooting at 1920 by 1080, which is full HD. So we can check that as well. And the audio info is there as well. And that's basically everything for the list view. So I'm gonna, if you want to know the information, some information about your shots there, then you can just click on the list view. There we've got the icon view. Go back to that one. This one here, adjust the size of the icons. If you want to make them bigger or smaller, you can do that. This is the sort icons buttons if you want to change some of the stuff that's in there in the list view. And over here we've got the new bin button. So if you click that, it creates a new bin, which is basically a folder, like one of those. So if you click that, it'll create a new folder, and you can use that. You can name it, call it folder, whatever you want to call it. And you can, if you want, you can sort your shots into folders. So more folders. It's a really good idea to put everything into folders and get really organized, especially when you get lots of footage. You know, you want to organize all your files, and it's just good file management, really. So you can just drag one of those and put it in there if you want, and then go, okay, well, I'm going to put all the shots of the pyramid in this folder. Cool. So that's and then we can go double click on that, and then we see this is where all the shots of the pyramid are. And if you've put one in there and you don't want it to be in there anymore, you can just drag it back over one of the folders up here. So your folders that you've opened all appear up the top here, just like that. So you can just click on them and go, okay, well, if I want to drag one of these shots, I can just drag it over there and put it back where I put it, where it was before. So that's the bin button, and then we've got the new item button. So if we click on that one, there is a few options here. There's a new sequence, shortcuts, offline file. A lot of this stuff we won't use. The main stuff that we might use in here, and this is stuff, it'll just create these, is we will use a new sequence. We will probably use an adjustment layer. Stuff like universal counting leader is a bit of a novelty. It's just like a universal counter thing. Bars and tone, we might do a little bit of that later in a black video, which is just basically it creates a black screen. So we won't really worry too much about this stuff at the moment. The only thing we will do is go new sequence. And this will bring up the sequence window. So in here, there's a couple of ways that we can create a new sequence. So basically, a sequence is basically what we're editing. So just to give you guys a quick demonstration of that, what I'll do is I'll just cancel that and go, when we want to start editing, we can create a new sequence, and that's what we're editing. We're editing a sequence or a sequence of shots. So there's a couple of ways to do it. You can grab one of your shots and you can drag it onto the timeline like that, and just let go of the mouse button, and it will create a new sequence. Cool. And we can see this is our new sequence, and we can bring the mouse over the playhead here, and we can scrub through our shot. So that's one way to create a sequence. Now, that's a really easy way to create a sequence. And when you create a sequence, what happens is it creates the sequence pops up over here, and it's just named after. You can tell it's a sequence because it's got this little blue icon on the bottom right corner, and it names it after the name of the file, which, if you're looking for your sequence over, because it always just puts the sequence in the folder over here. So if you're looking for your sequence, because you might end up making 2 or 3 sequences, for different edits of the same thing, then it can get a little bit confusing. So you can go to your sequence and you can change the name of it. So you can call it rough cut 1. Okay. So that's one way to create a sequence, and this is where we do our editing. So now the thing about making a sequence this way is that it will set up the sequence with the same aspect ratio and settings as the shot that you have just imported into the timeline. So what that means is that if this was shot in 1920 by 1080, then that's the size of the sequence. So we can check the sequence settings by going up to sequence and sequence settings. So sequence settings, that one there, and it'll tell us our sequence settings. There's there's a bit of information here, but there's not a lot of. You don't really need to worry too much about it. So there's things like the frame size, which is the aspect ratio, which is 1920 by 1080. The frame rate, which we can change. So all of this stuff we can change. And there's a bunch of other stuff here, but I won't get into it too much. But needless to say, you can change the frame size. So that's one way to create a sequence, and then another way is to go click the little new icon button or new button, and then go new sequence. And this will bring up this window where we can create a new sequence. Now usually with, depending on what I'm filming, but it's usually the sequence, these are all different types of sequences that you can set up based on different types of cameras. So usually we're using, when we're starting out, we usually go digital SLR or DSLR camera. And so if we go, there's all our options. We can go to DSLR or digital SLR, and 1920 by 1080, that's this one here. And let's say our footage was at 1920 by 1080, 25 frames per second. We'll click on that one. Cool, and that's my new sequence there. It's a new sequence, and it's appeared down the bottom here in our bin with our footage. I'm just going to call it rough cut 2. There we go. And it's got no footage in it at the moment. So then if I grab some footage and import it onto the timeline, it will come up with this message. So what it says is this clip does not match the sequence settings. Change the sequence to match the clip settings. So what that means is that the footage doesn't match the exact sequence settings that we have set up for this sequence. So if you recall, the sequence was 1920 by 1080 at 25 frames per second. Now this footage was probably 1920 by 1080, but it might be 24 frames per second. So that's all it's saying. It's saying it's not doesn't have the same settings as the sequence that we've just set up. So there's no need to panic if this happens. So all we have to do is go either keep the existing settings of the sequence or change the sequence settings to match the footage. So in this case, I'm going to go change sequence settings, and then it's all good. Cool. And then we're ready to do some editing. So I've got my two sequences. They're both in my footage bin. Rough cut 1, rough cut 2, and they appear on the timeline. So you can click rough cut 1, rough cut 2. I probably don't need to use rough cut 2 at the moment, but it's really useful for the having different sequences is really useful for example, when you are working on something and you do your first version of it, your first pass of your edit, or your first rough cut of your edit, and you've got a bunch of shots on here and you're really happy with it, so you could go, okay, well I don't want to make any more changes to this, so I'm just going to go right click duplicate, and that will duplicate your sequence, and then you can go, okay, so that's my first rough cut. I don't want to make any changes to that, so I'm going to duplicate it, and then I'm going to work on the duplicate or the copy. So that's one of the things that's really useful about different sequences in Premiere Pro. And you could call this rough cut 3. Cool. And then it will change your sequence, the name of your sequence. There we go. So I'm just going to close that one, go back to our original. Okay, so that was just an explanation of the basic how to import files, how to set up some sequences in Premiere Pro. Yeah, I'm just going to stop that here, and then I'll do another tutorial on basic editing, and then using all the different tools in Premiere Pro. So that'll be in the next tutorial. Okay.